War Room, the Hockey Podcast, episode 69. Welcome back. Again, some more time off, family and personal reasons going on, so we took a little more time off again. But we are back, episode 69. This week is kind of a little bit of everything. We're mainly going to cover the upcoming World Junior Tournament, which is, I'm sure, going to be high-quality hockey like it always is, whether there's fans or not.
It's the most wonderful time of the year.
Obviously, we'll get to it. Sweden has had a hit to their roster with COVID reasons and all that stuff. There's questions around the United States and the quality of team they're going to put on the ice, but we will all get to that here coming up shortly. A few headlines to start for everybody. Episode 69 of War Room Hockey Podcast. I'll pull up some headlines for everybody. The most recent one that came up this morning, Henrik Lundqvist out due to a heart condition, will not play in the 21 season. It's hard to say 2021 season when they're not starting until 2021. So, but the upcoming season, he is out.
Yeah. Let's just call it next season.
Recently signed a one-year contract with Washington and will now not play due to a heart condition.
They really kept that quiet, hey? Like, I heard nothing about that from anybody until this morning.
Again, well, we just kind of mentioned it, NHL hoping to start the season in mid-January. Again, everything is still a hope, nothing confirmed yet, but the talked about date is January 13th with a 56-game schedule. If you follow the social media of anything from NHL, us, TSN, Sportsnet, anything like that, there's been speculation and hype around the potential division alignments. Again, nothing confirmed yet as they hammer out some travel issues and different questions like that.
More questions than answers right now on every front, and we'll get to that in a bit. But It is there is a lot of moving parts. I am still confident that Bettman and Fear and Daly and everybody is in the whole PA is going to get this done because there's just too much at stake. But man, they got a lot to do.
Yep. Alexander Steen retires after 15 seasons.
Good on him.
Report is due to back issues. So he is stepping away while he can still step away, I guess is the way to say that. But tremendous career for Alex Steen. I am sure, well, I don't want to guarantee it, but I'm sure that he will at least be discussed for a future Hall of Fame ballot, wouldn't you say?
Yeah, for
what he's done.
He doesn't have huge numbers. He never put up huge numbers, but man, what a solid career. He was kind of a throw-in when Toronto Toronto drafted him. He played 600 games there, and then he was a bit of an afterthought in a deal to St. Louis, which they've regretted ever since, amongst many other deals they regret. But, he's got, 1,400 games in the show. Where is he? 7, 8, 9. He's 1,000-point guy.
Yep, pretty close.
So not jaw-dropping numbers, but, man, just solid everywhere. Yep. The kind of guy you got to have, and a great kid.
Agreed. Good on him. Congrats on him for 15 years, for 15 NHL career. Yep. Lots of big mess going on in Vancouver. Holtby apologizing for his mask. Welcome to the world we live in. The world-famous anthem singer fired for protesting the lockdowns. And now reports coming out that there might be a logo name change due to the negative connotation to the natives around the orca logo that they have. Whatever that means, we're not going to get into it, but that's a headline coming into the hockey world today.
So we're just a few minutes into this, and already my left eye is twitching over all this stuff. It's ridiculous. Let's just move on. This sucks.
We're going to move on. Moving on, NCAA hockey is underway. American International in the Atlantic Hockey League, in the Atlantic Hockey Division, sits first place at 9-3, so they've got a good start. Minnesota in first place. Quinnipiac. The ECAC is not really underway. Quinnipiac and Clarkson are the only two teams that have played games, and the WCHA has yet to start anything.
Yeah,
they've got conference-wise, they've got overall numbers here, but conference-wise, they've yet to get underway. A lot of teams do just because of COVID and everything, but NCAA hockey is playing. They're playing in pods. Right. So they're doing at least so that they can hit the ice, which I think is important for these kids. But hey, I digress.
And we'll get to a little more of that in a few minutes too.
But having said that, though, Alaska shuts down their season in the NCAA.
Yeah.
The powers that be up in the Alaska government apparently decided that it was too dangerous for them to travel all the way from Alaska to go play anywhere. So screw these kids, and we're just going to shut it down.
Okay. Well, they're a little short of space in Alaska also, which is, you can imagine how cramped the guys must be there
in Alaska.
Yeah.
Exactly. Anyway, BCHL is on pause. So is the majority of the CJHL altogether. But since they're on pause, to talk about them, I do want to mention they have 132 NCAA commits for the 2021 season. So
that's about where they were last year when we were at.
They put about that
showcase.
Number every year.
Yeah.
But hey, good on them. They continue to put out those big numbers, so good for them. The WHL is not scheduled to start in January as they had hoped.
Yes.
No updates as far as I've seen on when they hope to or plan to, but January is now off the table for them. At this point, you'd argue just cancel and just come back next year. But again, there's more at play than just those rash decisions.
Yeah.
So
and that's again, like everything else, we've got more on that and the far-reaching effects of it. But that's more on that coming up as well in just a few minutes.
Yep. Worm the Hockey Podcast. Part of the reason we were also away is we've got in the next few months we've got some big changes coming for us. Big things coming here in the coming months. So look out for that on our social media platforms and weekly here on the podcast. So big things coming there. Worm the Hockey Podcast, episode 69 this week, kind of covering an amalgamation of everything, mainly junior hockey, and trying to at least speculate some answers on some of the questions around the hockey world. Before you do anything, make sure you hit the subscribe button. And the most important thing to help us climb the charts, unfortunately, is not subscriptions, but make sure you do that. Subscriptions,
which is free, by the way.
Yes, subscriptions are important to us, but to get us up the charts is the ratings and the reviews. They are what proves to the algorithms that iTunes and everybody has that we are getting listeners and that we are that we have the numbers.
Yep.
that we're there and that we can compete. So make sure you rate, make sure you review. Obviously, you can rate and review how you deem and how you feel the show is, but let's be honest here, it's a 5-star. So nothing less.
And we need your help because I am running out of fake names to rate and review with. I'm starting to run thin, so we could sure use some help out there.
Right now, he's on Turd Ferguson. So, Turd Ferguson has entered the building.
Big fan of the show. Big fan of the show.
So make sure you do all that. Settle in. Episode 69 of Worm the Hockey Podcast is with you, and we will be right back to cover the questions that be.
Beauty.
We're on the Hockey Podcast, episode 69. I real quick, and this was one of the biggest headlines that I wanted to touch on. Completely forgot about when we did our intro. Pierre Lacroix has passed away.
Oh yeah, gee whiz.
Tremendous,
Sorry to forget that.
tremendous. Not only tremendous brain and tremendous man in the game of hockey, tremendous general manager. He did great things, and tremendous person he seemed like as well. So he will be missed not only in the hockey world, but in the Avalanche and Nordiques organizations and in their histories. Tremendous, and he will be missed. So rest in peace to Pierre Lacroix.
Absolutely. Thank you for that.
Wanted to touch on that. Now, as we transition here, we're going to talk real quick because it is coming up in a matter of a week and a half or 2 weeks, the World Junior Tournament. The biggest question that I want to start off with is the thoughts on Robertson not being loaned out of Toronto. Is that the right move? Is it the wrong one? Is it a good or bad situation? Is it good for him because that means that he's likely earned himself a regular spot on the NHL roster?
Exactly what it is.
Or what's going on is, should he have been loaned so he can play? He's at that age, or has he done tremendous things? He's earned himself a roster spot.
I think most of the time, most GMs, especially if the kid has a legitimate chance to be in the roster come the start of the season, 9 GMs out of 10 are going to say, don't let him go. I'm going to keep him. As with Alex Lafreniere, Robertson, there's a handful of them around on, from all different countries and all different rosters, not go. And you send a kid over there, he gets banged up. You're not doing the kid any favors. Yeah, everybody wants to play for his country, and it's all well and good. And that whole thing is fun and games until somebody has an ACL or a concussion or something like that. So no, I would not take a kid that I thought might, even in the next couple of years, be a factor on my everyday roster. Would not be going. So that's the right way to go with that. And with him in mind, even without him on the U.S. roster, without Lafreniere on the Canada roster, those two are the quality of the tournament this year. Again, I know it was a tough year last year for the U.S., but those two teams and Russia probably going to be the ones standing at the end of the tournament in January. If anybody out there who listens to us who has not seen that, watch the World Junior Championship. Find it someplace wherever you are. Watch all you can. These are NHL stars coming along, and everybody that you see in the show today, everybody's sweater that you're buying, and who everybody's on Xbox and everything, they all started in the same place, and it was a World Junior Championship. So, anyway, Russia roster, you got the Askarov kid in goal, who's going to be a star. He's a Nashville draft pick. You've got who else jumps out at you? Podkolzin, the Vancouver Canucks pick, going to be a star. He's another guy that's going to be big in this league. Carolina pick Vasily Ponomarev, solid player. I mean, they're going to have a great roster. Abramov and Amarov, both Toronto Maple Leaf picks up front. Look out for Russia. They can score. If they get the goaltending from Askarov, they're going to be real hard to beat. Sweden's got a great roster. They've got a handful of their defense, especially Bjornfot, Broberg, Soderstrom. They've got some great players on defense. Probably the best overall defense in the tournament. U.S. Man, this roster at the U.S. has got everybody. I don't know how much attention you've paid to that so far. I know there's a little bit of brain damage over who's not coming, like Robertson, but Spencer Knight in goal, Tyler Klevin on defense, Jake Sanderson on defense, a star, absolute stud. Matt Benier from Michigan, he is draft eligible this year, one of few. Cole Caulfield from Wisconsin, Brendan Brisson up front, Farinacci, Arthur Kaliev, Alex Turcotte, Trevor Zegras. What a group of forwards. They can do everything there. So
Matt, and don't forget Matt Boldy either. He's
good catch, Matt Boldy.
He's got himself some size and everything there too. So
just a great roster. Canada coming in with three unproven goaltenders. I mean, you got Dylan Garand from Kamloops, who's a Ranger prospect, probably the front runner. They're real solid on defense. Jamie Drysdale, Bowen Byram, Caden Gooley, Caden Korzak from Kelowna. We've seen very, very sturdy defense. Justin Barron, another Avalanche defenseman. Up front, listen to this.
I'm looking
Quentin
at it.
Byfield, Dylan Cousins, Kirby Dack, Dylan Holloway, Peyton Krebs, Connor McMichael, Dawson Mercer, Alex Newhook, Jake Pelletier, Cole Perfetti, Jack Quinn, Tomasino, and Connor Zeri. What a holy smokes! So I like that. I like that roster. This is our annual. No one speaks to each other
in our family.
For a week and a half.
but
it's a wonderful time of the year. We all come together for Christmas and we all split up for the World Junior Championship. We throw away all that goodwill before we even get to the middle of January.
You know, I saw something.
Awesome.
I saw something as we were talking about juniors. First of all, my son is a 2038 draft eligible. We'll say so. Watch for the name Bennett Rower. He's a 2038 draft eligible. His mother will not like me saying this, but draft eligible, Team USA World Junior roster.
Well, he's gonna
because he will be a dual citizen. But
okay.
It's that kind of stuff that I need to. I saw something and it made me think. Evgeny Malkin, Alex Ovechkin, and Tarasenko.
Yeah.
Russians living in the United States. They all have young children, very, very young children.
Yep.
Obviously going to grow up in the United States, probably same scenario, probably be dual citizens with Russia and the U.S.
Yep.
Pure, obviously many years away, pure speculation. Are those three, if they play the game of hockey, you know they're going to be pretty good hockey players. Are those three Russia or Team USA?
Let me answer that with a couple of different.
It's that type of thing, right? So I just said Team USA for my son. It's not that definitive. If he gets to that point, he's going to spend. He's born in Canada. He's likely going to spend it, if not his entire life, a big chunk of his life in Canada.
Yep.
Pending any moves or changes. So while he'll be dual, will Canada be his choice? So will Russia be their choice, or will they go Team USA?
Alex Turcotte. Dad played in the show, settled in the U.S., born in the U.S., playing for the U.S. Who else do we have here? In years past, anyway, there have been a lot of guys that come through. They're sons of former players. Guys settle in the U.S., they stay in the U.S.
So, the Kachucks, Stasny.
Yeah. Even Brett Hull.
Even the Hulls, yeah.
Yeah, Brett Hull was...
if I remember correctly, though, Brett Hull was, at least on my memory, the first big one to actually make the decision.
He made the decision
some other players just end up doing it.
Yeah.
Hull, if my memory is correct, actually made the decision of actually came out and said, I'm going here instead of there. Whereas other names that I listed just kind of
you play where you can. You play where they'll take you. That's with Brett Hull. The first time he tried out for, I believe it was a World Junior Championship back in the 80s, Team Canada didn't want him. I think it was World Juniors. I can't remember which one of the youth tournaments it was. Canada cut him. When he then became a star at Duluth, and he said, "Screw you! I'm playing for the U.S." And he was, he was dual. Stasny was actually born in Quebec City. So
now with Hull, was that a situation where they said no to him? We don't want you, became a star at Duluth, and then they wanted him.
Yeah, he had the opportunity to go back and play for
and then
Team
they finally
Canada.
actually said, "Hey, we now want you," and then he said, "Screw you."
No, that's exactly the way it went. And so, but most of these guys, you know, when you're that good, you're at the development camp. They'll take you to Ann Arbor, wherever they have that, and you'll go with them from there on. So I'd say, you know, in Ovi's case, he's such a hardcore Russian. The kid, if he plays and he's any good, he may end up going back to try to play for Russia, but you never know.
Here's the question while we're on World Junior too. It's likely, kind of now the game is growing and improving in a lot of countries, and it's great to see as a hockey fan that it's doing that in places like Switzerland and even Kazakhstan and these different places, that they're actually able to compete a little bit and put some quality on the ice. Having said that, it's likely, like in years past, that the big ones that you're going to see competing for medals are Sweden, Finland, Russia, Canada, and the U.S.
Exactly.
Now, that might be the case this year. Here's the question though: if you had to pick of the teams competing a sleeper team, that if they ended up on the podium or they ended up competing in that situation, wouldn't necessarily shock you.
Germany. Yep. Germany.
Out of all the teams, Austria, Canada, Czech Republic, Finland, Germany. You say Germany.
Yep.
Russia, Slovakia, Sweden, Switzerland, the U.S.
The Swiss scare the crap out of somebody every year. Right.
To the point where they're not, that doesn't necessarily make them a sleeper anymore.
True, but there are still some style of play issues with the Swiss, and it's not necessarily bad. It's not wrong or right, but it's just different. It lends itself better to the World Junior because they playing under IHF rules suits the way they are brought up. As far as being able to compete with the North American teams or with Sweden, Finland, Russia, probably the team that is, if not this year, going to knock off somebody, then soon. At the speed at which they're developing players is going to be Germany.
Yeah, I can't argue with that. Any other World Junior points that we want to make before we kind of transition and move forward?
Just watch it. Just watch and pay attention. These guys, remember the names. Watch these guys play. There's so much passion. There's so much skill and speed, and they just play their hearts out. This is my favorite hockey tournament of the year, and yes, that includes the Stanley Cup.
It is a good tournament with or without fans, so it's fun to see.
Yep.
Tension in our household, but it's fun to see. I remember my better half scolded me a year or two ago when the U.S. and Canada played in the outdoors, and the U.S. won in the shootout after Brady Tkachuk's shootout goal. And I learned real quick right there that I'm outnumbered in my own house at that point with my significant other, and if I'm not careful, my son will be against me too. So I need to raise him right.
We'll see how much influence Grandpop can have with him.
Before we transition, I do want to say a quick note. If you are a podcast listener, tune into the Blessings of Life podcast. My wife Carly and I are the ones doing that podcast. Well, we've only done 2 or 3 episodes so far due to pregnancy and having our first child, amongst other work and other situations. We do enjoy that podcast, and we do think that it is quality listening and something to tune into to kind of help to keep things in perspective. The Blessings of Life podcast. We also have in the coming weeks and months a podcast that I'm doing with a colleague and a buddy of mine called Dad Motive with Jerry. We are doing that. We will be filming that for YouTube as well as recording for Spotify and Apple Podcasts. That is coming up soon, so stay tuned for updates on when that gets going. Dad Motive, all about dads, the reasons why you want to be a dad, why you are the dad you are, things like that. So Dad Motive, keep your ears to the ground for that.
I'm gonna be calling into that one or sending messages into that one because I think I'm probably the best suited to provide dad jokes.
Yes.
Of anybody.
Yes. That's a must on that one to have at least some dad jokes. So Dad Motive, stay tuned for updates on that. Also, in the Okanagan, Breakaway Brewing, tremendous beers on tap. You love the stout.
Oh, the stout.
The stout is great.
That is mine.
The vanilla cream ale is a fan favorite, as well as the new New Zealand style Pilsner. I'm not a beer guy necessarily, but the vanilla cream and the New Zealand style Pilsner are two beers that I enjoy and actually can and want to drink. So make sure if you're in the Okanagan Valley, you stop into Breakaway Brewing. We are filling growlers. We are filling grunts. Breakaway is hoping to have their own growlers and grunts for sale coming in the next week or so. So make sure you step into Breakaway to pick one up for Christmas, as well as any other merchandise like hats or glasses for stocking stuffers. Breakaway Brewing in the Okanagan is doing tremendous things with giveaways and swag and gift cards as well. So Breakaway Brewing in the Okanagan, your place for craft beer.
They charge for the beer, but the wisdom is free. Just so you know, all beer comes with free advice on any topic.
It is. We mentioned it before. An old, I'm putting it in air quotes, sponsor, because again, so far we're not getting paid for mentioning these. But an old friend of ours, an old sponsor of ours, Jeff McCallum, has retired from ABK. We mentioned that a week or two ago. Congratulations on retirement. He's kind of like you, though. How will retirement suit him with the fast movements there? Maybe you and him can go in on buying that block in Penticton that's for sale.
Oh, my goodness. Yeah, that's just what we need. I've been trying to avoid Jeff as much as possible because between the two of us, we're so full of ideas and things that we just overload ourselves.
Yes. So, Dad Motive podcast, stay tuned for updates on that. When we do, make sure you subscribe. Make sure you rate and review. Again, ratings and reviews are huge for climbing the charts. Make sure you tune in when that gets going to not only Facebook and Instagram, but also Apple Podcasts, Spotify, and wherever you get your podcasts, as well as YouTube. We will be filming Dad Motive for YouTube as well. So tune into that when it is up and running. The Blessings of Life. Make sure you head to Apple Podcasts or Spotify, subscribe, rate and review again, the big ones, and stay tuned. There are plans to continue to record and put out episodes for that as time permits with everything going on at home. And War Room the Hockey Podcast, as always. Facebook, Instagram, Apple Podcasts, and Spotify. Like, follow, rate, review, subscribe, and continue to listen. We appreciate your support. So, War Room the Hockey Podcast, episode 69. World Junior, we touched on that a little bit.
Good there.
We are good there.
There's a transitioning from World Junior to the NHL. Right now, as bad as we feel for all the kids playing minor hockey that may or may not be able to get on the ice, all the kids playing developmental bantam and midget hockey, draft eligible into Junior A or Major Junior. Junior hockey players that are trying to get into scholarship programs in NCAA. Draft eligible players this is their year to be seen in the show. Bad time to be shut down. But what if you're a head scout, if you're a scouting department, player development, who are you drafting? The draft rank right now, I mean, it's out, but it's based on mostly last year. Mm-hmm. So many kids are not playing. There are probably 100 kids that could be in the top 15 in the NHL draft, the upcoming NHL draft, but nobody will know because we can't see them.
To me, I'm going to take a guess that NCAA and the World Junior Tournament coming up is going to be the big indicator. Because right now,
you might not have anything
right
else.
now in the NCAA, first of all, Carter Savoy at Denver.
Yeah.
He's wow.
tearing it right up.
8 or 9 games that Denver's played,
Yeah.
and he has 5 or 6 goals, and how many? I mean, he's tearing it up. But Carter Savoy, what I'd have to pull up his stat. What's his draft? Is he draft eligible?
He's an Edmonton pick.
So he's already picked.
Yeah.
Okay, never mind. But
it's Matthew that's coming up in a couple of years.
Right. Yeah, getting the brothers mixed up. Anyway, the point is, World Junior Tournament and NCAA, I think, are going to be the big indicators for the draft because of the situation we're in.
Yep. Couldn't agree more.
Speculation right now, based on his play so far with Michigan, does Kent Johnson go first overall? He's like Savoy in Denver. He's lighting it up in Michigan as a first-year player at the University of Michigan, doing tremendous things that even when he played in Trail in the BCHL, you didn't think he was capable of, and he's doing tremendous things. But he's doing the type of tremendous things where good on him, but I still didn't see him as a first overall pick. And yet, because of COVID and whatever else, he might be the guy that goes first overall.
He very well could be. I mean, right now, Owen Power is ranked at the top of the draft class, but it's like there could be 24 kids that could go number 1. There could be 100 kids that go in the top 10 or 15, and certainly Johnson is one of them. And while a lot of people may not have seen a lot of Kent Johnson, if you listen to War Room, the hockey podcast, you got him from last year's showcase. He was at the top of our class along with Finney Williams, and these guys jumped right out at us at the showcase, and so you may be surprised, but we're not.
No, I'm not. When I say I'm surprised, I'm not really surprised, but it's one of those things where you could argue maybe somebody's higher up in the rankings than him. Until this point is all I'm saying.
Yeah, and with that in mind, think about it this way. The number 1 overall pick may or may not mean much this year. Everywhere in the top 2 rounds, everywhere in the top 3 rounds, you could uncover a gem with the 75th pick, which is not always the case, just because not everybody has seen much of these kids, and you may not get a chance to see much of them. And it's likely that everybody's going to play at some point before the draft happens next summer, but who knows how much or where or against whom.
Yep. Yeah.
So that's a real sticky.
A lot of questions, and it's those same questions could be asked moving forward, because again, you could argue that the flat cap is going to continue even for the next couple seasons.
Well, I'm glad you brought that up.
So as a result, before you move forward, what does that mean for free agency? Because to me it's the same. Before you answer the question, I'll ask the question, to make us look like we actually prepared. To me, it creates the same question that you kind of got this year. I mean, there's still a number of guys this year that have not signed. Mike Hoffman, and guys like that. And there's a number of guys on the free agent list that are likely not going to see NHL ice this year as a result, free agent wise, right?
Agreed. Yep.
To me, he was a great depth forward, but you may or may not see Carl Soderberg in an NHL lineup this year.
Exactly.
Right. So, and not because he's not worthy of it, but just simply because of cap and COVID and things, it is what it is. So as a result, especially with the fact that at the end of the day, players and agents want to get paid flat cap or not, right? So as a result, moving forward, because every year you're going to have big name free agents like Pietrangelo this year and things like that. What is the flat cap moving forward mean for big name guys like that?
It means it's a bad time to be trying to cash in on free agency. And that's just tough. That's the way it goes. Nobody likes it. The owners are getting clobbered. The players are right now, just so you know, they're taking out a loan against their salary. So the deal with the CBA, which has another 6 years on it, by the way, the deal with the CBA is the players get 50% of hockey revenue. Hockey revenue for this year has been determined already to be $3 billion. Now, there's a new TV deal coming in the U.S. ESPN's chiming in, and a couple of other things are happening. They're maybe fluffing up the TV revenue for the league, but for right now, the players have negotiated with the league that they'll go back to work. Everything's going to happen like normal, but they want all their salary. All the players' salary this year is $1.8 billion, roughly, a little over $1.8 billion. I think it's $1.871 billion. Their contractual share of revenue, hockey revenue, is only $1.5 billion. So the owners are going to pay the extra $371 million to the players, but the players are going to pay it back. So if you got a paycheck this year, there's going to be a deduction coming. So right now, the flat cap is probably going to extend at least through next season. Let's just say, for example, we play 21-22 as normal, October to March. But during that season, the revenue going to the players is going to be reduced by, to make it simple, it'd be reduced by $371 million. So you're going to pay all that back. It's basically a loan. You're going to get your full salary, but you're only playing, let's say, 56 games. So you're going to be paying back 26 games worth of revenue at some point. It might be next year, might be the year after, it might be 3 years from now, but your escrow and everything that you have coming to you is going to be deducted. So you might get your full $6 million salary this year, but next year, if it was all to be corrected in 1 year, instead of getting your 6 next year, you would get 4.8 or something to that effect to deduct your share of that shortfall of $371 million. So that's the loan against salary, but let's expand that further, because all this ties together.
Well, it also creates questions too for Seattle.
Oh, yeah.
For Seattle in the expansion draft of, the type of players that are not only unprotected and made available, but the type of players that they're actually willing to take. I mean, you got to take who you take. I mean, if whoever's unprotected, but
right.
The point is, it affects who you want to take, because while you do have to get to the cap minimum to field a team with a flat cap, that adds up pretty quick. So,
it's going to be like everybody's going to be, fortunately, everybody's in the same boat. Everybody's got to manage the same salary cap. They've all got to figure out when this happens. Like you bring up Seattle. Seattle has to figure out who to choose, but it's probably more complicated to figure out who to make available, because now you got to base some of that availability based on signing, the signing potential. Am I going to get this guy done? The players and the agents have to say, comparables in 2019 had me at $4.5 million. If I went to arbitration, I'd get $4.5 million. Now with a flat cap, even though I put up good numbers, I might only have a market for 3.5. So do I sign for 3.5? If I'm Mike Hoffman, do I take a 30% haircut on what my value could have been, or do I sit out? If you sit out, who's going to magically come up with the extra money? No one is. That's who. Nobody. So everybody's got decisions to make, and the complexity just keeps getting worse, because now you've got the roster questions which haven't been settled. So you've got, are they going to let you have 25 guys on your active roster and 5 on your inactive roster? How do those inactive players affect the cap? If you send a guy down making $2 million and you bring one up making $750,000, do you get to take all that money off your cap, or do you just get to take off the top $1 million, which is the case right now? Normally, as you know, a normal roster will use 35, maybe 40 guys in a year. If you limit them to 30, how are you going to navigate through guys getting banged up? How are you going to, what if a month or two into the season, 40 games into 56 games, Evan, your 30-man roster, now you've got walking wounded, you got 18 guys left. Now what? So, like we said at the outset, there's more questions than answers. And they've got to figure this out. They've got to figure it out to everybody's satisfaction. And there's going to have to be some compromise. The one thing that I'm really happy went away is the Players Association's potential discussion of filing an unfair labor practices lawsuit against the league. That would have been a good idea. Whoever said that should have been thrown out the window, and whoever said let's don't do that should get a promotion, because that is just the most ridiculous idea at this point in time that you could ever come up with. And if that was Donald Fear, he should know better.
Agreed. Well, to me, the question that comes up, and it's just one I thought of literally just a second, but I'm gonna ask it because it scares the living shit out of me, is will this 5-player taxi squad situation affect the style of play? Will we see in some fashion, whether it was intended that way or not, an OHL situation where now it's waving sticks, but we're just kind of, you know what I mean? Because you don't want to risk it,
right? That's
because
a great
all
question.
of a sudden now you get preseason style, even Olympic style play, where now it's just kind of like, well, I don't want to get on Tom Wilson's bad side and risk being out for 3 months with a concussion, because the team's going to be screwed. Yeah. So does it affect the style of play to ensure that you've got your roster?
Great question.
At the home stretch of the season, 56, 80, however many games, when you're competing for the playoffs and the Stanley Cup, because 56 games or 82, either way, Stanley Cup's a Stanley Cup and you got to compete. So does it affect style of play?
Yeah, that's a good question. And I hadn't thought about that part of it, but in the interest of caution, maybe you don't see as many guys blocking shots. Maybe you do see fewer guys willing to go in between the dots and go to the front of the net and go into the corners. I don't know. We'll just have to wait and see. And who knows? Like, how many? What they look like every year. You've got either years where you're on your third, fourth, fifth goaltender.
I mean, for crying out loud, Colorado had last year had the season record of, I think, 5 or 6 goalies not only played, but 5 or 6 goalies each had a win. So that's 5 or 6 different goalies that you're playing at a time.
Toronto's defense last year was down. They were down.
And
to
that
their
right there is your
9th and
taxi
10th.
squad.
Right.
If you're not careful, is 5 goaltenders. So
yeah, what's good for one's good for all. They're going to figure it out. It'll get done. It's going to look different somehow. It might be in a hub city, or several hub cities. It might have division realignment, including a Canadian division and a couple of U.S. divisions. We don't know. It's going to be different than normal. But it's going to be the same for everybody.
I did hear a rumor of some players wanting baseball-style series play.
Well, that makes sense.
Where, Chicago comes into Colorado and they play 2 or 3 games in Colorado.
Right.
And then Colorado goes to Arizona and plays 3 or 4 games in Arizona. Yep. And then, type of thing.
Well, we talked about that last episode, where why would you do a road trip where you're in Edmonton one night, Calgary the next, then you get a night off and you're in Vancouver, and then another night off, or back to back you're in Winnipeg? Why would you not go play Edmonton twice, Calgary twice, Vancouver twice? On the way home back to the Eastern Conference, you stop in Winnipeg and play 2. Like, for travel, for maybe even safety, it makes way more sense to do it that way. And look, the owners are going to be shelling out money that they're going to be in the red this year, at least temporarily, with player salaries. So they're willing to put that money up and collect it down the road from the PA. But if you can save money on travel, it benefits everyone. And look, when you start asking questions, every question leads to 3 or 4 more questions. So at this point, it's all speculation. It is starting to take some shape, though, right?
It is. It is. Nothing's confirmed, but January 13th is the speculated date now.
That's the target.
That's the target date. Granted, they've had target dates before, but January 13th is the target date. new, at least temporary division alignments with the Canadian division has some traction and some steam, things like that. So they are making progress. Unfortunately, though, again, they're making progress with putting things in front of you and then leaving you wondering how it's going to play out. So,
well, and think what the guys have to deal with when you talk about having. They're talking about having partial buildings with fans. It only works if every building gets to have fans.
yeah.
Some provinces, some states are allowing those kind of gatherings. Florida is pretty wide open. California is nothing.
Yeah.
So you could go to Tampa and probably put 10 or 12,000 people in the building, or to Miami. You can't do that in San Jose or in LA or Anaheim. It's not. So you can't open some buildings to ticket revenue and gate revenue and concessions and not others. So do you go to hub cities? Do you go to places that are open for business like Florida, and do you create a hub city there and have teams flying in and out of a bubble or staying in a bubble for 6 weeks or something until some of the restrictions are lifted? What do you do? And every state, every province they're handling it differently, and they keep changing, and the border restrictions keep changing. So it's a bit of a mess, but what we do believe right now, correct me if I'm wrong, we think it's going to be approximately a 56-game schedule. We think it's going to start January 13th or thereabouts. We think the players are going to get full pay and repay that back over the next 2 or 3 years. We anticipate at least a couple more years of a flat cap, even if there is a new TV deal. And we have no idea yet what the rosters are going to look like or how they're going to handle rosters without an AHL, without an East Coast Hockey League. We don't know when the draft is going to take place or who's going to be in that draft, because half the kids eligible for the draft this year have yet to play a minute.
Yep.
So that's what we know. That's what we don't know.
Yep. So we're leaving our listeners with more questions than answers, unfortunately, because that's where we're at.
So we're a little bit like a Netflix series. We get you right to the end, and now you're just going to have to keep watching. You're going to have
tuning
to
in
tune
to find
again.
out. Coming week, what are we excited about? I know we're 9 days shy of Christmas. World Junior Tournament is starting in about that same time frame, and it's well over 1 week, but January 13th, potential start to the season. So lots to potentially look forward to in the coming weeks. Yeah. But in the coming week, I suppose I'm looking forward to being back in studio again for another recording.
Yep.
Making progress on some big changes that we mentioned earlier with the podcast moving forward.
Yep. New opportunities there.
New opportunities, all that stuff.
Next weekend starts the World Junior Championships. We got some preliminary games, pre-tournament games starting on Monday, December 21.
What we're gonna have to do, and I'm just thinking of this now, is BCHL showcase style recordings during the World Juniors.
Ooh. What if
obviously watching from home or whatever, but at least getting some recordings in while watching or while doing something to put some commentary to things, whatever, all that stuff to at least bring people in, kind of be in an effort to bring the information in a more timely manner than week episode, because then we're behind 5 or 6 games and we're all this stuff. So
I think that's a good idea, but what you have to decide is what
I get to make the decision.
If this one's on you, I'm all for it. You can count me in, but what if you're not speaking to me? Then how do we do an effective episode if you're giving me that annual silent treatment? You're not as bad as
mom is a little worse than me, I'll just say. But
and your brother
and
gets
my brother gets a little stirred up, but it should be fine. No, it'll be fine. But it is something. We should try to do.
Yeah.
Speaking of the Dad Motive podcast, while we're talking about it, we did have an idea to have an episode about wonderful dad ideas. and that got me laughing with Jerry about your infamous, hey, I've got an idea. Love it. So look for that. You are going to be, we've talked about it, you are going to be a guest at some point, and we're going to discuss. So
I'll see if I can work it into my schedule. How's that?
So anyway, a lot to look forward to. I am looking forward to potentially trying to do that with the World Junior Tournament. At least whether it's 15-minute little short episodes or whatever, at least adding some commentary to the tournament and at least bringing the information. Even if we're doing an episode every day or every other day type of thing, at least for the duration of the tournament, at least putting more timely information out there than a week to week thing where we're behind by
3
5
or 4
or 6
episodes of
games.
15 minutes apiece.
Yeah. So
I have to be careful because my text messages during the World Junior Championships always contain a lot more obscenities than they do on a normal basis. So I have to be careful where I open those up.
well, are they voice text messages or just text messages?
Just texts.
Okay. Well, then if you're not reading them on air, if you're not reading them on recording, then it should be fine.
Oh, okay.
Unless you plan on, for the sake of adding context and content, you decide you're going to share what's being said, then,
No.
then
can't
look
do
at
that.
look into a bleep button, which you've been saying we need for a while, and
Gotta get the bleep button.
all that stuff. So, but
Well, lots going on.
a lot to look forward to. It is good. Hopefully, of course, I say this all the time, and now there's talk of you and your significant other then leaving town again here soon. But hopefully, whether it be in studio or Zoom, we get back into weekly or bi-weekly recordings and back into more steady stuff, especially if the season gets going and all that stuff. So
definitely. We'll do that for sure.
a lot to look forward to. Again, going to flood you here again. Some plugs. The Blessings of Life podcast. It is up. There's 2 or 3 episodes there. We do have plans to record more here in the future. Don't know when yet. A lot going on here at home. But please subscribe to that, rate and review for that, and stay tuned. Dad Motive. That is coming up. There's going to be fun there, but it is started in a serious thing because there are resources, a lot of places that we find for moms, not a lot for dads, with different topics like miscarriages or birth or anything like that. So there's some serious reasons why Jerry and I have decided to do this. But
What's it called? Dadapalooza?
Dadapalooza, yeah.
Okay.
But we will have fun with it as well. Dad motive, dad jokes, different stories, different things like that. So we will be recording that for YouTube as well as Apple Podcasts, Spotify, and anywhere else you can get your podcasts as well. That is not out yet, so stay tuned for that.
Dad
we
2.0.
We will provide updates for that. Stay tuned. War Room the Hockey Podcast. We are trying to stay up to date with social media posts. Unfortunately, only so much you can post about when there's not a whole lot of hockey content out there at the moment. But hopefully here in the coming weeks, starting with the World Junior Tournament, that begins to change. So stay tuned. This has been episode 69 of War Room the Hockey Podcast, covering different headlines. Sad to hear about Henrik Lundqvist. Rest in peace to Pierre Lacroix. And episode 69, World Junior Talk. World Junior Tournament starts here in 8 or 9 days. Big stuff. Christmas. Everybody have a Merry Christmas and a Happy New Year. We'll mention New Year again, but have a Merry Christmas. If you can be with your families, screw the government. Be with your families and enjoy your New Year. Enjoy your New Year, and we will look forward to a bright new year, hopefully, for not only the world, but the hockey world and War Room the Hockey Podcast.
And I'm not wearing a mask, by the way.
Not in studio, no. Thank you for joining in studio.
Love it. Thanks for having me.
Appreciate it. Our listeners are the driving force behind what we do. We can't thank you enough for continuing to tune in and your continued support. Make sure you subscribe and you rate and review, and we will see you next time on War Room the Hockey Podcast. Cheers.
Cheers.